Hey everybody, Alex Kapitko here, and this is a special little quick update episode of the Center from Reality podcast. I just got done watching President Biden's address to the nation, and I was going to wait till this afternoon to put this episode out, but I figured I would address what he said and then also get to some thoughts of just kind of updates that have happened over the last 24 hours or so. I have to say, last night I was sitting on the couch to do some reading before bed, and I started watching Fox News and then CNN and then MSNBC and then PBS. And, it was early morning in Kiev and Lviv, and we started to see explosions, airstrikes in the distance. Martial law was put into place. You heard the evacuation sirens. And now, as of today, I just saw that Lithuania has declared a state of emergency. They're obviously a NATO ally. And there's a lot of just disturbing reports right now. But last night I was watching this kind of unfold in real time. And it looks like our worst fears are true, right? Because they had a point when I was watching Fox. Their correspondent on the ground in Kiev basically said, the fact that we're hearing explosions here, and we also have someone in Lviv, and then Richard Engel on MSNBC was in the south of the country, and he was hearing explosions. It's a fairly big country. And the fact you're hearing explosions in every part means that they're not just staying in the Donetsk, Luhansk, and Donbas regions. So I think the worst fear seems to be coming to light, that Putin has sent in airstrikes to take out key military infrastructure for Ukraine so they can't do a quick response. There's reports of Belarusian troops helping Russian troops to take out border patrol. And then there were also missile attacks on key sites around the country. And what worries me about all of this is that it seems like Putin is trying to get A, Ukraine to respond, but B, it almost seems like he's trying to get NATO to respond. And that is somewhat worrying to me in so many different ways, right? But obviously we're going to need to see over the next couple days how this unfolds, but it looks like they are doing a full-scale invasion at some point. I don't know how far they're trying to go, but, a lot of the Ukrainian forces are over on the east right now, and I'm worried that this could turn into a very long conflict, a very long guerrilla war tactic style conflict. And I think we know what Putin's thinking, but I still don't know why. Because the stock market's down. A lot of Russian people at home don't care about this. They don't want this. Putin knows that we're going to start limiting imports. It's all just kind of crazy. And this looks like an Afghanistan or something like that, or the Russian invasion of Finland, what I'll get to later. But none of this makes sense. Obviously, it makes sense that he's angry and wants back his perceived idea of Ukraine. But it's not going to be that easy. Anyways, I wanted to just quickly go over Biden's speech, which is, I'm currently looking at the TV, and he is now doing the Q&A part, but I just wanted to go over some things that he mentioned in the speech. So he started out by talking about, the lies, which there's some very dangerous lies that have been coming out of Moscow, out of the Kremlin specifically. There's lies about Ukraine starting the attack. There's lies about Ukraine committing a genocide on the Ukrainian Russians. And there's also lies about Ukraine basically aiding neo-Nazis, and even aiding neo-Nazis during the Second World War. And Putin has basically said we need to go into Ukraine to do a denazification, which is ironic because Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, for example, his family helped fight against the Nazis in World War II. So that's just the most clear example I can use. Obviously, there was a lot of Ukrainians who tried to fight against the Nazis, but it's just strange. Putin is looking for every example possible here. And so Biden mentioned that. So there's a lot of propaganda. Then Biden went on to talk about what's happened, which I addressed already. Air raids, missiles into cities, tanks on the east. And I also heard that a lot of these Russian rockets and airstrikes are not particularly as precise as some would expect. And so they're probably taking out civilians, non-military infrastructure. And I have also seen, and Biden mentioned it as well, that the Ukrainians have taken out some Russian planes, Russian helicopters. So we are seeing a response on both sides, which is clearly what Putin wanted. Anyways, a few takeaways from what Biden has said. He clarified that, in quotes, Putin is the aggressor. When he was asked what's going to happen and how we're going to respond as of now, Putin has said, obviously, more sanctions and something new as of today, which is imposing limitations on what can be imported into Russia, which will obviously cripple them from getting necessary goods, also key infrastructure, key technology. So that's going to be interesting to see because we're basically going to try to cut them off, right? Biden said that he spoke with the G7, and this is actually what I think is one of the best things they're going to do, as of now at least, which is they're going to limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, and yen. So they're basically going, I mean, obviously the G7 came to agreement on this, but they're going to try to pretty much cut Russia out of the whole international monetary system because it's not just the dollar, it's not just the yen, we got euros, we got everything here. And Biden went on to talk about how VTP, which is the second largest bank in Russia, which has about $250 billion in assets, is going to be frozen. So they're going to put sanctions on this bank. And, you know, he had a really good point for why they're looking at Russian finance, Russian banks, and trying to hurt the elites in Russia. Because he basically said here that releasing the banking information and freezing it of wealthy Russians is important because a lot of these oligarchs are gaining from these policies and are profiting off of some of these Kremlin policies right now, and they should feel the pain. And I absolutely agree that. I talked about it on Tuesday as well that, you know, we have Russian oligarchs owning the New York Nets. We have Russian oligarchs in the UK owning property, sports teams. These people should feel the pain. They can't be part of Russia, but then also flourish off of the system that they're so-called attacking or have grievances against. It doesn't work that way. And so I'm happy to see that Biden talked about that. Where it gets a little gray for me is that Biden talked about what's next in terms of what the United States is going to do. He said, so they're taking steps to defend allies in the East, right? No shit. He said that actually tomorrow NATO is going to have a summit with over 30 of our allied nations. They're going to map out the next step. I think a really important takeaway here is that Putin has, ironically, unified everyone. Right? It's actually surprising how much Germany has condemned it. It's surprising how much Europe is unified on this. And the world. China, a little different, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But it is interesting to see how this may have backfired on Putin because everyone's unified against him. And so when Biden said over 30 nations tomorrow talking about next steps, that is great to hear. We have a unified cause. Then he also said... which as of now is what the consensus is in the United States, and probably for political reasons, it's also quite popular. Biden said, our forces will not engage with Russian forces in Ukraine, but we will send support. And he just said, we will defend every boundary of NATO, which is quite vague to me because, so he's saying we're not sending troops into Ukraine, but we do have troops on standby in Germany. We are apparently going to be sending a few more troops to Germany. And Lithuania, for example, like I mentioned at the top of the show here, has declared a state of emergency. So I think what they're saying is, as of now, nothing is going to happen. But if any of if the Belarusians or the Russians actually move into any of our NATO territories, Article 5 commitments will be imposed, which is attack on one of us is an attack on all. So as of now, we're not going to do anything, but we have troops waiting. And I'll be honest with you guys, like when you see Lithuania has gone into a state of emergency, when you hear that there were Belarusian troops on the Ukrainian border with Putin's forces, it worries you that this is starting to tick off into something bigger. I really hope I'm wrong, but those are strong words from Biden, and clearly we're not going to have troops in Ukraine at this point. But we have troops in Poland, we have troops in Germany, and it's going to get interesting because after the coverage of yesterday I saw, and after these airstrikes, after these attacks on the border patrol, these videos I saw last night of tanks rolling in, this is the beginning of an invasion. I really think so. So Biden Biden did make it clear as well, which I think Tucker Carlson and Jesse Waters on Fox News, for example, should listen to, is he said, if this conflict gets worse, it's going to hurt the American people even more. And he's like, America stands up to bullies before the problems come here. And I think that's something important to address here, because if you watch just Fox News, they think that, why is Biden worried about this when gas prices are high and the United States has issues? Two things can be true at once here, right? And one other takeaway from Biden's address was that the administration has been working to improve cyber infrastructure with the private sector and the public sector. Obviously, that is probably the biggest fear, is if this conflict escalates, is that Russian cyber hackers and cyber terrorists may be able to get into the United States and freeze some of our infrastructure. That has been an issue for a long time, and it is good to hear that at least they've been preparing for that. So that was Biden's press conference. You know, there's so many questions right now, but I really do think Biden was clear, precise, and honest, and I'm glad he did that, to be honest. And before we're out of here, I'm going to keep this episode fairly short today. I just wanted to do more of an update. I really do hope tomorrow I can actually cover the issue that I was planning on covering on Monday, which is Florida's Don't Say Gay law, or bill, which is awful, in my opinion. And I just wanted to talk about kind of the book burning that's going on in the United States. So hopefully we can get to that tomorrow. But this next part is almost kind of a PSA to the people that are maybe listening to Tucker Carlson or Fox News or Trump. I started with that lovely video here for the second part of this episode of Trump praising Putin. I will admit he's being somewhat sarcastic. I don't think he's actually just saying what Putin did is genius. But he does say, ooh, peacekeeping mission. What a peacekeeping mission, and stuff like that. It's clear he's joking, but I think an ex-president, former president, any leader of the United States should have the guts, it shouldn't even take guts, honestly, to just say, hey, like, what Putin's doing is bad. And Trump kind of sounds like a color commentator whenever he calls into these shows. And it's a little irritating. Like, I had Laura Ingraham on last night on Fox News while I was just watching different channels to see what was happening with Ukraine. And she was talking to a national security expert and then just cut him off to have Trump come on. And Trump just kind of mumbled about how, the economy's bad, Biden's done an awful job, it's all Biden's fault. And they've completely muddied the waters on what the hell is happening with Ukraine, because Trump just gave this babbling color commentary that made no sense. But anyways, I think this video of Trump is disgusting for just so many reasons. I don't want to get into all of them. They're, in my opinion, fairly obvious. But it also did give me some really interesting insight, I guess, on what Trumpism's become and what this kind of national conservative populism is becoming. It's really telling of this form of grievance politics that Trump has, I wouldn't say created, but he's really mainstreamed. It's basically the idea of Putin invading Ukraine and killing thousands of people over there potentially doesn't impact me as an American directly right now, so why should I care? And that's kind of the message we've seen from Fox in general, and honestly, a lot of progressives that are isolationists too. And the cognitive dissonance is quite impressive to me, because, I wrote this down last night when I was watching it. I was watching Tucker Carlson too for a little bit, and I really think that this kind of populist conservatism is annoying, because I said this on Tuesday, so I apologize if I'm repeating it, but it's annoying to see these people who clearly don't know anything about Ukrainian history and clearly are neglecting the history of the 20th century. And they buy into this Russian lie that the U.S. promised there would be no expansion of NATO, and now Putin is just rightfully angry and he should rightfully take Ukraine. It's just all not true, right? What is true is that Baker and Bush in the early 90s said that at the time NATO should not be expanded and there was no reason to expand it. But over time, things change. Countries wanted to be part of this quite effective order that was keeping stability in the region, and they joined. It's not that crazy. It's not like we owed that to Russia. If a country wants to be part of a mutual security agreement, on the European continent, they should be allowed to, right? It's not Putin's decision. And there's a tragic irony here, that people like Tucker Carlson, Trump in some ways, Charlie Kirk, they're condemning the U.S. and say we shouldn't be involved because of our imperial past. I see people on the left say this too. Like, who are we to say anything? We had imperial problems. We're not so good. Do you remember when Trump said to Bill O'Reilly, why do you think we're so good? We're not killers too. It's just ironic that we're so busy condemning us that now Russia is currently trying to take over Ukraine for imperial reasons, Basically, people like him are just busy condemning Biden and our own country and our imperial past, while the biggest imperial threat to the world right now is invading Ukraine. There's just a cognitive dissonance that is hard to follow, And the Candace Owens and the Trumps and the Tucker Carlsons, either they don't know history well or they're lying. I feel like they're lying. I've never thought, for example, Tucker Carlson's an idiot, but he knows how to lie when it's better for his brand. Trump I think is kind of an idiot, but anyways. But we also need to remember that one of the most probably successful foreign policy agendas in the last 200 years was peace in Europe, right? Before then, we had all these bloody wars happening about every year. And peace, which NATO was a huge part of, has really brought a lot of stability. And it's this just dangerous isolationist agenda where they don't care about injustice as long as it doesn't hurt them. And I guess it'd be one thing if these people just wanted to stay out of a conflict. But the fixation on Putin, the defense of what he's doing in Ukraine, it's very lopsided. And, back during the Nazi Germany days, there were also isolationists in the U.S. who had similar arguments. They said, well, it's happening over there. We shouldn't get involved. It'll just hurt us. The Nazis aren't that bad. I mean, even FDR at some point didn't believe in intervention. But as we learned, eventually it hurts you as well. Obviously, it was through the lens of the Japanese army bombing Pearl Harbor, trying to cut off all our fuel supplies. But it did impact us. And those sympathizers with an oppressive regime really look bad. History has not judged them well. And I think we need to remember that. I think we really need to remember that. Anyways, I will just end with the fact that Russia doesn't really have a great track record of trying to take territory or sending these mass invasions into places they can't win. I mentioned at the top of the show the Finnish-Russian War, and I think we could see something similar here. And just as a refresher, because I encourage people to check it out further, because it's actually one of these kind of fascinating points in in world history. Basically what happened is the Soviet Union wanted Finland, and this was back, I think, in the late 30s. Yeah, it was in 39. And when Finland refused, the Soviet Union launched an attack. And this began the Russo-Finnish War. And Soviet troops totaling, I think, about 1 million people, because we have to remember it was just this big mass. It was just a mass force that they would always send, because at the time they really didn't care about killing their own civilians in Russia. But anyways, so they sent, over 1 million men, and they attacked Finland on multiple fronts. And they outnumbered the Finns, obviously. But the Finns put up a very skilled response. They held their ground, and they were effective in guerrilla warfare during the winter. And the Red Army ended up not making much progress there. And obviously we are coming out of winter, which I think is one of the reasons why Putin's invading now. But it's just, I don't really know what the end goal here still is. We know what the motive is, but I don't know what the end goal is here. Because I used to think Putin just wanted to be heard. He's being heard loud and clear, and he won't talk to Vladimir Zelensky. He won't talk to to Biden right now. So what's the point? But probably the last thing Russia needs right now is an expensive, drawn-out conflict, because, let's be honest, the economy's stagnated, and the younger generations are angry. And they want an economy that isn't only reliant on natural gas and standardized oil as well. And I guess the one silver lining to this is I don't know if Putin survives this crisis. I don't mean literally, but I've said for years Russia needs a new regime. And I wonder if this could be the straw that finally breaks the camel's back, because the younger generations in Russia don't want an invasion. Putin is way less popular with them, and they're stagnated. And so I wonder if this could cause some internal problems inside of Russia. Maybe it also could just cause a crackdown on human rights even more. It's too early to tell, but anyways, thank you guys for listening. Again, this is just a little quick episode here because, good God, there's just so much happening right now. But my thoughts and prayers, I know that sounds cliche, but my thoughts and prayers truly are with the Ukrainian people, because I'm butchering it because I don't have the words in front of me here, but President Zelensky, I think it was yesterday, had an address to the people of Ukraine, and at the end he spoke in Russian and turned it right to the Russian people and right to Putin. And he said, if you guys are coming in, it's not our backs you're going to see. You're going to look us right in the eyes. And I think Putin's miscalculating because he thinks that the Ukrainian people are just going to stand down. And he even said that in his speech on Monday. But the Ukrainian people are strong. And like I said, all the polling shows that for the first time in a long time, there's a strong majority of the country that believes in a Ukrainian state. And we need to make sure and help them do that. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.